So,
That's it.
so hey, thanks everybody for joining us today. Um, I'm happy to introduce you to plugin cards. So plugin cards is a new capability, right, that we have in Drone. And basically what it means is it allows users to get uh, high-level insights, right, into their build execution and enable them to detect potential issues faster. So the idea is that rather than, if you run your build, right, rather than having to dig into the logs to find out, what went wrong or the results of a test or something like that, right, you'll just get a summary at a glance, right? So you can immediately see the most important things that your builds is doing. So let's jump to a quick demo. So you can see here my drone instance, right? If I go to log view that you're probably familiar with, you can see that my build did multiple things, right? First, it ran a clone, then it ran some tests. Then we have a step for git leaks, a sneak that does container scanning, a sneak step, and publishing to Docker Hub. So let's say, I'm a developer, right? And I wanted to know what happened in my build, right? So typically I would have to go to maybe the sneak image scan, right? Drag all the way to the bottom. And then look for the summary, right, of the sneak tests results. And I would do that not only for sneak, but any particular step that I'm interested in. Maybe I have 5 different steps that run scans and another step that publish to Docker Hub, right? And all the things that I like to see, right? Instead of basically having to dig into the logs, right? I can always go to our new cards view. And in the cards view, I can see the UI extensions of supported plugins, right? So basically every plugin that exists for Drone, we can easily add a visualization to it, and TP and Dan will explain how we do that shortly, right? They'll take you through that. But the idea is that our UI is now, right, extendable, and you can easily just add this capability to any plugin, right? So you can see that now, instead of having to go into the steps themselves, right, I can immediately see that these are the results of my sneak scan, and I have no leaks in my Git repository, right? And this is the sorry, the image that we have published to Docker. So of course, with time, right, as the community embraces that, we will see more and more plugins, right, adopting these steps, right? And for some steps, amazing engineers have already implementing these UI, extensions, the plugin cards, right? So you can see that, for example, for my Sneak plugin, I can see a summary of all the items that I found, right? How many vulnerabilities we found on each severity level, right? And similarly for the drone Docker plugin, right, you can see immediately the image that were published, right, with the name and the tag and the hash, right, and everything that you need to know. So really, instead of going into the logs, right, and having to dig into every step, and of course you can have pipelines even with 10 steps, 20 steps, right? The idea is that over time, of course, our engineers and the community will continue to build more and more visualizations, such as these ones, right? And you'll be able to just get your important information, right, at a glance. And of course, if you want to take it a step further, right, you can always go back to the logs view and start digging into the logs if needed. But that just saves a lot of time just by seeing a snapshot of the build immediately, right? So you can immediately quickly troubleshoot for issues, right? And immediately get a high level understanding, right, of everything that happened during the build. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Owen and Dan to continue explaining about plugin cards and how they're built and how to create new ones.
Thanks, Nofar. So my name's Dan Bluestein. I'm a front-end engineer on the drone team. So I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a walkthrough of the code on the front end so you can get an understanding of how it fits together. So I've just added some links with regards to adaptive cards, and I'll show you those in a minute. But really, the main thing I want you to take out of this, well, my piece, is adaptive cards are made up of 2 pieces, the card schema and the card data. Basically, the schema is, the design of the card, and you inject data into that schema. to get an adaptive card. Technically, you don't need the data, but then the card wouldn't be adaptive. Anyway, I'll share my screen. Nofar, can you stop sharing for a second?
I've stopped sharing. You can share.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, so let me see. So the first thing I want to show you is the Microsoft. So adaptive cards are basically, they've been created by Microsoft and they maintain the adaptive card ecosystem. The great thing about that is that we don't need to really maintain anything on the drone side. So Microsoft offer this designer to basically design adaptive cards. And on the left-hand side, you'll see they call it the card payload editor, but it's really the schema or the template. And then on the right-hand side is the data. So it's kind of like you design the template in like a JSON format. So, you know, your card will have a body, pretty much every card, and then it will have like text blocks and columns and things. And you can see here that this text block, which I think refers to this, the title, we inject the title in. So if on the left-hand side, I were to change the title to anything in typical programmer style, it's foobar, and you can see that it changes on the left-hand side. And basically you just, you can change everything on an adaptive card. Yeah, and then there's different kind of designs you can create. There's a lot of documentation, pretty good documentation on the Microsoft Adaptive Cards website. You know, I'll go through the different elements you can make use of and different variables you can pump in. But yes, so back to the example Nofar was showing. I'm going to show, basically I've got the dev tools open here and I want to show you how the adaptive cards are kind of merged on the front end. So if I click the card view, we'll see a couple of requests get made here. 3, 4, and 5 refer to the steps that are creating adaptive cards. And then there's also these calls out for card.json. Now, let me see. So if I look at, for example, the sneak card, it's probably going to be 4. We can see, so we make a call out to API, you know, the repo, and then cards, this cards endpoint. And 50 refers to the build number, 1 refers to the stage number, and 4 refers to the step number, which is the sneak step. Now, if we look at the response there, we get back an object with issues in it. So critical, high, low, and then different data. So that's the data piece. The schema piece, we make a request out to basically, let me see, if we look at the header, we have the schema saved here, drone plugins.github.io drone sneak card.json. And it returns basically a body, which is the schema we were talking about, columns, that kind of stuff. Now, how the data and the schema gets merged, I will show. So if I go to my VS Code, this is kind of where the magic happens. I wrote this 3-4 months ago, and I was reading the code today, and I was like, I should have done this very differently, but it works. So I'll maybe refactor it tomorrow. But basically, we've got this card component, and the magic kind of happens here in this loaded adaptive card function. I'm making use of 2 libraries in particular. Microsoft offer this adaptive card templating library, which is basically used to merge an adaptive card schema and the adaptive card data. And then they also offer this adaptive cards React library, which is basically just an adaptive card component, yeah, that we make use of. So, so this function, load adaptive card, it's an async function, and it'll take in the URL of where the JSON, or where the adaptive card schema lives. It'll take in the JSON, which is the data. I could have named these variables better, but I didn't. And then it'll set the adaptive card. I don't like the way I did that either, but it is what it is. So what happens here is we basically do an Axios call. I get on the URL to bring back the schema. Once we have the schema, we pump it into basically the template library that Microsoft created. It's schema.data in this instance, and then we have a template object. And the template object allows us to inject data. It uses the function name expand, but I would have used inject. It is what it is. So basically, we expand the template with the data, and we get this card payload back. And then I set the adaptive card as card payload. And what we get in the end is basically each of these. These are all an instance of the adaptive card component. So yeah, that's the main things I wanted to show. It's not an in-depth front-end demo, but it's just to give an idea of how the code fits together. Yeah, on NPM, Microsoft have this adaptive cards kind of namespace, which has a lot of stuff to play with. This templating library is the one I used, the adaptive cards React library as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Eoin take over with more of the back end kind of stuff.
Cheers. Nofar, do you want to share the slides again, please? So while Nofar's doing that, hey, I'm Eoin, staffware software engineer within Harness. I was the guy that was in the car at the last meetup, so I didn't actually you didn't physically get to see me, so that's why I'm introducing myself now. So hey, so yeah, I worked on the back end for this feature. Do you want to go back to slides, sorry?
This one?
No, back 2 slides.
Oh, back to
Yep.
this one? All right.
So in order to use this feature, you need to upgrade your drone server to 260 or above. So any of you guys that are 1.0.0 and wanting to go to 2, it's pretty worthwhile. There's a lot of new features in there, and the upgrade should be pretty seamless. Drone Runner, Docker, and the Kubernetes Runner, the latest Drone Docker 1.8.0. So there's 2 methods to be able to, 2 ways basically being able to bring this into plugins that you create. So say you're generating a new plugin, you can use Boiler template. That assumes that you're planning to use Golang. You don't have to. You can use any language to create a plugin within Drone, or the existing plugins that say it's one that we've created. You decide that you want to extend it to create an adaptive card. Down below is sort of a screenshot for how we basically generate a plugin template using Boiler, and then on the right hand side is basically a snippet of adding it to an existing plugin. Can you go to the next slide? I think it's basically jumping into the demo. Can you stop sharing, sorry, Nofar? Okay. So can everyone see my screen? Yeah, perfect. So there are 3 functions, and again, as I said before, you can do this in any language. It's just basically the logic is the important part. So we have this strut, which is the card input, and as Dan talked about it, there's 2 components or 2 parts within it. It's the schema, which is basically the link to the JSON that describes the card, and then the actual data, the payload. So that's what's going to be merged into the schema and display that data. So that's pretty straightforward. I suppose the next important part to talk about is that there's a couple of iterations on how we designed this. Within Docker, it was quite easy to basically copy information out of a container. Kubernetes was a lot more difficult. You can't really control the life cycle, so trying to get data out of a container that was about to be killed was quite impossible. So something that we agreed upon was being able to write out to the logs, which you can see here is the path of dev standard out. So what happens is we basically marshal the data into a format which is card schema data, and then we write it out to the logs. But the important part is down here, which is how the runner figures out how to extract that information out of the logs. And as you can see that we use this sort of prefix to basically pull the information out. And then it's worth also noting that We automatically set the drone card path to be standard out, but you have the option to write it out to a file path, but that's more to support CIE than to support drone. So definitely write out the standard out. So yeah, I think that covers all the important parts. Nofar, do you want to share your screen again with the slide, please?
You'll need the stuff.
Oh,
Sorry. No, that's good.
Can you see my screen?
Oh yeah, we can.
Yes.
That's stalled for some reason.
it seems to have just delayed a little
Okay.
for sharing for us. It's all right. So can you go on to the next slide? And yeah, perfect. So we were talking about the template file and how we've done it within Drone is we use GitHub pages and it basically allows you to host static files. Each repository is responsible for holding their own template file. You guys still see us, we're just sort of having a bit of a technical. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you don't have to do it this way. Your template file can be hosted anywhere, just as long as you can basically access it through HTTP. In order to use GitHub pages to get started, you create a docs repository in the root of the repo. You add a blank index.json file, and then you add your template file. And I've sort of given a wee screenshot of the structure that we have within Drone Git leaks. And then again, within GitHub pages under settings, you basically point to the docs folder and it just basically works. The magic is done for you. And that's how you host a template file. Next slide. So what's next? We have tons and tons of plugins within Drone, and you know, there's many that could benefit from having this card view. For example, GitHub Release, Artifactory, S3, CodeCon, the list is endless. So, you know, when we get time, we're going to try and tackle and add this functionality to it. But at the same time, it'd be great to get some community members who maybe want to take a punt, and we are here to support and help where needed. So on that, any questions for the team?
We must have done a really good job.
Or we bored everyone?
Let's take a look in the chat there. Yeah, I think we didn't have any text chat questions. So.
Hello, sorry. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
It's Andre here.
Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hey, my name is Andre, and I'm a developer from Lobster. That's a relatively small company, but we have started using Drone just recently and migrate now our pipelines from Bamboo to Drone. And right now we are looking for opportunities to display the test results and report them somehow on the screen. So these plugins, these cards seem to be pretty good way to do so. And the question is basically, can you, like, if you have multiple pipelines, let's say, which are dependent on each other, is there a way to have one single card with like the overall status of for the whole like process for these many pipelines, or one card per pipeline, let's say, with some sort of summary?
It would be more one card per step, and correct me if I'm wrong there. Just the way it's built so far. I get what you're saying, and it's not a terrible suggestion, but the way it's developed at the moment is just there's supposed to be kind of small snippets of information from each plugin, basically. So no is the answer at the moment, but
So there would be ways around it. So if you look at like existing test frameworks like JUnit, whereby you would be outputting test results into a shared folder, you would be able to like bring that information together in a plugin and display all of your results. But it really depends on what output the test format is coming as. So if it's an XML file and you are able to move those XML files into a single place, and then you could display that as a single card. So it really just depends on what you need. But if you're using like a standard JUnit output, I think you can generally like compose multiple JUnit output files into one place, and then you'd be able to create some JSON for that. So as they say, everything is possible with Bash. So like we can make it happen.
All right,
But
thanks.
But by default, each adaptive card is generally linked to one single step. But because of the shared workspace within Drone, you could have a collection of test output files and then bring them all together and have a single adaptive card for that at the end of all of your pipelines finishing.
All right, and one more thing. Maybe I missed that, but is there any sort of marketplace or shared repository where some cards are already available?
So we do have a current marketplace, and we're currently working on upgrading it.
Yeah, so right now there is a plugin, I think it's plugins.drone.io, but it doesn't have any information on the adaptive cards yet. Adaptive cards are so new, but we're actively, I'm working on it at the moment, is like an upgraded new plugins kind of library or marketplace, which will include information about adaptive cards. But it's very close to being complete, but it's just not quite complete yet.
So yeah, it will be out there in the future. It's a good suggestion that we would be able to maybe tag particular plugins that do have the feature enabled in the marketplace.
Also, Andrew, like if you were, do you know what testing framework you're using at the minute? Because that would be really handy to know.
We're using the project is .NET, so we use NUnit.
NUnit, okay, cool. Thank you. And we'll see what kind of test output you can get from that. And probably there's going to be one magic test output. Generally, it's JUnit XML files that we could possibly have an adaptive card for that to make it happen. Cool.
All right. Yeah, I believe the NUnit is not too much different from JUnit format.
It's possible you can also generate. I know we have other customers that were using NUnit and even XUnit, but it was a configuration on, you know, when they generated the reports, and there were some arguments they could have used, right, to generate the reports in JUnit format. So that might be possible as well.
I see there's a question there from Evan Smith. Is there a docs link for this on docs.drone.io? I don't think we do at the moment. It's such a new feature that we haven't got around to writing the docs, well, public docs yet.
The docs have been written. We haven't released it. We wanted to do this announcement today, and then we will follow up with documentation.
Yeah.
So why don't we do this? When you guys are done with the docs, let me know, and I'll send them out to everyone who has attended this meetup.
Sure. Cool.
Dave, we also got another question here.
Oh, good.
Which I can take this one from David Katz. He asked, would it be possible to create adaptive cards linked to custom plugins and steps? And the answer to that is yes. The way adaptive cards is architected is that it's the plugin owners that create the cards. So each plugin defines its cards, which means anyone who creates a plugin can create their own adaptive card, and it'll automatically work with Drone. So it's not something you have to ask the Drone team to create. If you built your own plugin, you create the cards, they'll auto show up in the user interface.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great, good question. Thank you, David. All right. Okay, so I think we covered everything there. Thanks again for joining us, folks. If you have any questions, you can ask on the meetup. You can ask on, but the best thing to do really is to go to community.harness.io or join us in Slack. And again, Marie is available to answer your questions or to find somebody to answer your questions if she can't. So again, thank you for everyone. Thank Dan, Eoin, Nofar, Marie, and we'll see you the next time.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you,
Thank you so
folks.
much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.